Hey guys, tonight we're wandering through the winding alleys of Osaka, hunting for the hidden secrets of its street takoyaki. You know, those little round octopus balls that smell like heaven on a hot iron griddle. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. While you're at it, drop a comment telling me your city and what time it is right now. You might be sipping tea, or maybe you're just getting out of a shower. And I want to imagine that with you. You step onto a narrow street, the kind where lanterns swing lazily in the breeze, and the smell of frying batter hits you before your eyes catch a single stall. It's almost unfair how instantly your stomach wakes up. The air is thick with sizzling sounds, sweet sauce, and a hint of smoke from charcoal. Nothing life. Threatening just enough to remind you that you might not survive the first day if you don't pace yourself. Which is my polite way of saying, don't eat 5 in a row. Or do. I won't judge. Your gaze lands on the first takoyaki stall. The vendor flips the round balls with astonishing precision. Each turn a practiced dance perfected over decades. Historically, takoyaki emerged in Osaka during the early 20th century as a cheap, satisfying street snack for working class families. But here's a fun tidbit. Some historians argue that early versions weren't always octopus. Sometimes they were filled with beef, shrimp, or even kimchi, which is a pretty bold statement for the conservative taste buds of that era. Academic debate still bubbles about which ingredient came first, so technically, you're nibbling on a living controversy. As you inch closer, the golden brown spheres glisten with sauce and bonito flakes that shimmy as if they're alive. You notice the batter has a distinct texture, chewy but soft, which is achieved through a combination of wheat flour and a hint of potato starch. A secret that Osaka street chefs guard like treasure. You watch a flake float lazily down into your hand, and you realize this is the kind of street magic that never gets old. Every bite you take connects you to a century of flavor experiments, small tweaks, and occasional, oops, moments that somehow became tradition. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You move along the bustling alley, and your nose leads you straight to the heart of the takoyaki mystery. The octopus itself. Those tiny morsels of cephalopod goodness hide a centuries-old fishing tradition. You learn that Osaka, sitting by the bay, relied heavily on small-scale octopus fishing, and the tender octopus chunks in your snack are a nod to those hard-working coastal fishermen. Some say the choice of octopus over other fillings came down to availability and cost. But historians are still debating whether taste or practicality came first. So technically, you're chewing on a little argument in every bite. You peek behind the stall, noticing how the vendor selects each octopus with care. Size matters here, too big, and the pieces don't cook evenly, too small, and they vanish in the batter. There's also a lesser-known fact. In the 1920s, some Osaka street vendors experimented with soaking octopus in sweet soy to tenderize it, which later inspired modern marinated versions. You try to imagine that first person carefully dunking octopus into mysterious sauces, hoping no one would complain. As you watch, the octopus sizzles and curls in the pan, each piece twisting like it has its own personality. You realize there's a rhythm to the flipping, a silent understanding between batter and seafood. And yes, academic debates continue about whether this flipping technique originated in Osaka or was influenced by neighboring regions. You shrug, taking it all in. The smoke, the laughter, the smell of sauce mixing with ocean air. Like a sensory history lesson you didn't know you signed up for. With every bite, you notice how the octopus is tender yet firm, absorbing the flavor of the batter without losing its cheeness. There's something almost poetic about it, small, humble, and yet so deeply tied to the identity of Osaka street food. You can't help but smile at how a tiny piece of seafood can carry decades of culinary tradition and scholarly debate. You fix your eyes on the sizzling griddle, mesmerized as the takoyaki balls tumble and spin under the vendor's skilled hands. Each turn seems effortless, almost magical. But in reality, it's a technique passed down through generations. Historically, the iron griddle itself became a staple in Osaka street stalls during the 1930s, allowing cooks to make multiple rounds quickly. A quirky little fact, Some early vendors would use tiny sticks made from bamboo skewers to flip the balls, and the origin of this technique is still debated among culinary historians. As you watch, steam curls up like lazy ghosts, and the aroma of brown batter mixed with sweet sauce hits you full force. You notice a subtle hissing sound each time a ball hits the hot griddle, almost like applause for the cook's precision. It's a small sensory symphony, sizzling, popping, and the faint snap of the octopus inside. You might chuckle quietly to yourself, imagining if someone tried to flip takoyaki with a spoon at home, they'd probably end up with a batter explosion. There's also a little-known tidbit. Some griddles were historically heated with charcoal instead of gas, which added a faint smoky flavor that modern grills try to replicate, but never quite nail. Academic debate continues about whether charcoal-grilled takoyaki truly tastes better, or if nostalgia just colors our taste buds. You can almost picture early customers leaning over the smoke, waving their hands like tiny fans to cool the balls, while secretly savoring that aroma. And here's the thing. You start noticing the rhythm. Flip, roll, adjust. The vendor's motions are almost meditative, a dance choreographed over decades of trial, error, and countless hungry customers. Each ball that emerges golden and round is a tiny victory, a perfect blend of history, chemistry, and a touch of street-level magic. You take a slow, deliberate bite, letting the warm, savory flavors settle in, because right now, this is Osaka, and you're tasting its heartbeat. You lean closer to the griddle, eyes tracing the batter as it bubbles and browns. At first glance, it seems simple, just flour and water, but this humble mixture has a history stretching back centuries. Street food historians note that the basic batter for takoyaki evolved from ikashiyaki, a round egg and flour snack from nearby Hygo Prefecture. Over time, Osaka vendors adapted it, creating a slightly thicker batter that could hold octopus and still crisp on the outside. Scholars still debate exactly when this transformation happened, but every bite you take is a little taste of that culinary evolution. As the vendor pours more batter into the molds, you notice small flecks of green spring onions, or sometimes pickled ginger, adding a subtle crunch and zing. It's funny because these tiny additions were considered optional for decades. Yet now people argue fiercely about whether a real takoyaki should include them. Some vendors even whisper that adding too much green ruins the authentic texture, while others say it's essential for balance. You watch the debate unfold silently as your brain absorbs both aroma and history. Here's a quirky nugget. Early Osaka street vendors would sometimes mix leftover rice or starch into the batter to stretch it further for hungry crowds. Not very Instagrammable, but it worked. And it reminds you that ingenuity often comes from necessity. You can almost hear the vendors of the past muttering under their breath. Just enough batter, not too much, or it'll be a mushy disaster. As the batter sets around the octopus, you realize this simple mixture carries layers of history, preference, and experimentation. The smooth outer shell, the soft inner dough, the tender octopus. It's a tiny miracle of chemistry and tradition. And, like many culinary origins, scholars still argue over who truly perfected the recipe first. You smile to yourself, knowing that while debates rage in lecture halls, your belly is happily settled in the present, enjoying a perfect bite. You take a step back and watch the scene from a few paces away, letting your eyes wander across the bustling stall. Each vendor moves with a rhythm that seems effortless, yet you realize it's anything but. Street vendors in Osaka have honed their craft over decades, perfecting timing, spacing, and multitasking. There's a subtle artistry to their gestures, pouring batter, flipping balls, adding toppings, like watching a miniature ballet unfold on a sizzling iron stage. Historians note that this efficiency reflects the industrial spirit of Osaka in the early 20th century, when speed and quality had to coexist for hungry crowds. A quirky detail catches your eye. One vendor wears tiny gloves, not just for hygiene, but because handling the griddle constantly can burn your fingers faster than you'd expect. You chuckle, imagining yourself trying that for 5 minutes. You'd probably surrender to pain and laughter simultaneously. Interestingly, some older accounts suggest that vendors used to cook barehanded, relying purely on intuition and experience, which sounds either heroic or insane, depending on your perspective. Scholars still debate whether modern techniques make takoyaki better, or just safer. You notice a local leaning on the stall, chatting casually while munching. Street food isn't just about the snack itself. It's about community. These alleys carry conversations, laughter, and tiny debates over whose sauce is better, or which stall has the softest batter. There's something timeless about this, a reminder that food and human connection have always gone hand in hand. As you breathe in the combined scent of sauce, batter, and octopus, you feel yourself transported through time. Every flick of the wrist, every bubble on the griddle, whispers stories of families, tradition, and creativity. The hum of the street, the chatter of locals, and the sizzling symphony of the griddles form a living, moving history lesson. Right here in front of your eyes, you overhear a conversation between two locals debating the origins of takoyaki. And suddenly you realize history is alive here, not just in books. Some claim it all started in Kyoto, evolving from akashiyaki, while others insist Osaka perfected it and made it theirs. Scholars still argue over the exact birthplace, and honestly, listening to both sides is more entertaining than most documentaries. Every bite you take is a little vote in this century-long debate. As you watch the vendors skillfully roll the balls, you notice the careful placement of octopus pieces. Early takoyaki recipes were simpler, sometimes just batter and green onion. But over time, vendors added pickled ginger, tempura scraps, and other fillings. A lesser-known fact in post-war Osaka, some street cooks experimented with cheese inside their takoyaki. Decades before fusion cuisine became trendy, you can't help but grin at the thought of those experimental cheese, octopus balls, which sound either brilliant or bizarre, depending on your mood. The roundness of each ball feels deliberate. Vendors tweak batter consistency, heat, and flipping timing to create a perfectly spherical snack. And yes, historians still debate whether shape matters more than flavor. You try one bite, marveling at how soft yet firm the interior is, how the octopus surprises your teeth, and how the sauce clings just enough to make every mouthful satisfying. You step back for a moment, taking in the scene, lantern swaying, smoke drifting lazily, the rhythm of sizzling batter, and the chatter of patrons. Takoyaki is more than food here. It's a conversation between past and present, a shared cultural memory you can hold in your hand, savoring both history and taste simultaneously. And somewhere deep in your mind, you acknowledge that being part of this debate, even silently, is part of the fun. You notice the subtle changes in the stalls as seasons shift. In spring, a hint of sakura essence sometimes finds its way into the batter. In summer, vendors sprinkle extra bonito flakes to balance the heat. Street food in Osaka has always been surprisingly seasonal, reflecting local harvests and flavors that change throughout the year. Scholars still debate whether these seasonal tweaks were intentional innovations or simply practical adjustments based on ingredient availability. As you wander further down the alley, you see children pointing eagerly at the steam rising from a griddle. Some stalls add small toppings, spring onions, pickled ginger, or tiny tempura bits, that seem minor but transform the taste entirely. Here's a fun fact. In the early 20th century, these additional ingredients were considered optional luxury items. Yet now they're practically mandatory. You can't help but smile at how human preference evolves, sometimes faster than historical records can track. You pause to watch a vendor scoop batter into the molds with precision, then gently drop the octopus pieces. The rhythm is almost musical, like a soft percussion, blending with the ambient hum of the alley. You notice that even the most experienced chefs adjust their techniques slightly each season, tuning batter thickness and griddle heat. Academic debate still rages about whether these seasonal tweaks actually improve flavor or simply satisfy tradition. With every bite, you feel the subtle influence of time, climate, and experimentation. The takoyaki isn't just food. It's a reflection of the city's history, a record of evolving tastes and tiny, thoughtful adjustments. You take a deep breath, inhaling the warm aroma, feeling somehow connected to countless hands that shaped this culinary legacy before you. You kneel slightly to get a closer look at the batter as it sets in the molds. It's not just flour and water. There's a hidden complexity to this seemingly simple mixture. Street food historians note that the inclusion of a small amount of potato starch or yam flour can dramatically change the texture, making the balls chewy yet soft. It's fascinating how a tiny tweak like that becomes a hallmark of Osaka-style takoyaki. Scholars still debate whether this addition was a clever innovation or a happy accident. But every bite you take embodies that subtle choice. You notice the vendor carefully pouring batter, letting it pool just enough to cradle the octopus. A little-known detail. Some early cooks would mix leftover rice into the batter to extend portions for hungry crowds. Not very glamorous, but effective. And it shows how resourcefulness shaped the flavors you enjoy today. You chuckle quietly, imagining that first customer who bit into a slightly heavier, rice-studded takoyaki, probably wondering what on earth was going on. The texture develops as the balls brown, the outer layer forming a delicate crust while the inside remains tender. You realize that batter composition is an art, one that balances water, flour, and subtle starch ratios. A gentle touch ensures the octopus doesn't get lost. The ball keeps its shape, and every bite has the right chew. Historians still debate whether modern recipes strictly adhere to original ratios. But in your mouth, the result is undeniably satisfying. With each careful flip of the balls, you notice how batter and filling come together in harmony. It's more than chemistry. It's a conversation across generations, a tactile history lesson disguised as a comforting snack. You take a slow bite, savoring the chewy interior, the tender octopus, and the history baked into every curve, feeling the small but profound connection between technique, taste, and tradition. You lean closer to the stall, watching as the vendor delicately brushes a thin layer of sugar into the sauce. At first, it seems unnecessary. Why sweeten an already savory topping? But this tiny addition balances the flavors perfectly, giving each bite that familiar, comforting kick. Interestingly, sugar wasn't always common in takoyaki sauces. Early recipes relied solely on soy and dashi, and historians still debate when sweetness became standard. You notice subtle variations from stall to stall. Some sprinkle a touch of honey, others add mirin, and a few even experiment with molasses. Each choice alters the flavor slightly, yet the differences are surprisingly significant. A quirky fact, during the 1940s, a few vendors experimented with condensed milk in their sauce. A strange fusion that didn't survive long but makes you smile imagining it. Culinary history is full of these odd experiments, little what-ifs, that shaped what tastes familiar today. As the sweet-savory sauce caramelizes slightly on the hot takoyaki, you inhale the aroma and feel the magic of centuries. Old experimentation. You notice the way the sugar enhances the golden crust, giving a subtle shine and depth that makes each bite feel luxurious without costing a fortune. Scholars continue to debate whether the sweetness came from Western influence or local innovation, and you think it's fun that a little sugar can spark such academic debate. You take a slow, deliberate bite, letting the chewy batter, tender octopus, and perfectly balanced sauce linger on your tongue. Each mouthful is a harmony of history and flavor, reminding you that sometimes the smallest ingredients make the biggest difference. In this moment, you realize that what seems ordinary sugar and sauce, a tiny twist in recipe, carries a story spanning decades, quietly influencing every taste you enjoy. You feel the gentle heat radiating from the iron griddle as the takoyaki sizzles, and it hits you that fire is more than just a cooking tool. It's a silent teacher. Historically, Osaka vendors mastered the balance of heat and timing, ensuring the batter crisps on the outside while the interior remains soft. Some old recipes even called for charcoal, which added a subtle smoky flavor. Scholars still debate whether charcoal truly improves taste, or if it's just nostalgic romanticism. Watching the vendor adjust the flames, you notice how every little tweak matters. A slightly higher heat can make the outer layer crunchy, while a gentler touch preserves the tender chew inside. A fun, quirky fact: some experimental vendors once tried using ceramic stones instead of traditional grills, which led to uneven cooking, but supposedly enhanced aroma. You imagine customers cautiously biting into these raw-cooked takoyaki, wondering if it was genius or madness. The flipping of the balls is mesmerizing. Each turn is deliberate, timed perfectly to create that golden brown perfection. You realize the motion isn't just practical, it's almost meditative, a dance of skill, muscle memory, and instinct. Historians still debate whether these flipping techniques originated from Osaka street vendors or were inspired by neighboring regions' culinary methods. You bite into a freshly flipped takoyaki, feeling the gentle crunch give way to chewy batter and tender octopus. The warmth spreads slowly, carrying the subtle smoky notes and the perfected balance of heat. You can't help but appreciate the centuries of trial and error baked into this small, round snack. Every bite is a story of patience, experimentation, and a touch of magic that only Osaka streets can provide. You notice the array of ingredients lined up on the counter, each waiting for its turn to become part of a perfect takoyaki. Over time, vendors added toppings beyond octopus, tempura scraps, green onions, pickled ginger, to elevate both flavor and texture. It's fascinating to see how something so humble evolved into a layered culinary experience. Scholars still debate whether these additions were purely for taste, or also to impress customers visually. But either way, it adds depth to every bite you savor. You watch a vendor sprinkle tempura crumbs into the batter with a flick of the wrist. A little-known fact: these crispy bits were originally leftovers from other fried dishes, repurposed to add crunch and reduce waste. You chuckle at the resourcefulness. Food history is full of such happy accidents that turn into traditions. The addition of green onions and ginger later became almost mandatory, their subtle pungency balancing the sweetness of the sauce in a way that's now expected by every local. The interplay of textures is mesmerizing. Soft batter, chewy octopus, crunchy tempura scraps, and the delicate zing of pickled ginger, all wrapped in a shiny, savory sauce. You realize each bite is like a miniature orchestra, every ingredient contributing its note. Historians still argue whether modern takoyaki fully respects the original balance, or if contemporary variations are simply innovations that surpass tradition. You take a bite and let the layers unfold in your mouth, feeling the subtle contrasts and delicate harmonies. Watching the vendors work, you sense that every addition tells a story, not just of flavor, but of culture, economy, and centuries of evolving tastes. The street isn't just alive with people, it's alive with history, baked into the very roundness of each perfect takoyaki ball. You take a closer look at the iron griddle, noticing its dark, seasoned surface. It's not just a cooking tool, it's practically a member of the family for takoyaki vendors. Over decades, the griddles develop a natural non-stick layer from oil and repeated use, which helps create that golden brown perfection. Scholars still debate whether the exact seasoning technique came from Osaka itself, or was influenced by street cooks in nearby regions. You notice the vendor lightly brushing oil onto each mold, a subtle ritual that ensures the batter won't stick. A quirky detail: in the past, some cooks would smear a mixture of lard and miso on the griddle to enhance flavor, a practice that's largely vanished but speaks to the creative spirit of early street chefs. Watching this, you imagine young apprentices learning from elders, fumbling with oil and batter, gradually mastering a skill that looks deceptively simple. The griddle's surface is more than functional. It affects taste and texture in ways you wouldn't expect. Slight irregularities create tiny pockets where batter crisps just right, while perfectly flat areas yield smooth, chewy interiors. Historians still debate if modern flat, commercial griddles can truly replicate the nuanced textures of these seasoned surfaces. As you bite into a freshly cooked ball, the golden crust snaps gently under your teeth, giving way to the soft, chewy center. You realize the griddle itself is an unsung hero, quietly shaping the perfect takoyaki experience. Every curve, every texture, every subtle crunch is a testament to centuries of careful observation, experimentation, and a little bit of street magic that only Osaka can offer. You watch as the bonito flakes dance atop the steaming takoyaki, fluttering like delicate autumn leaves in a gentle breeze. These paper-thin shavings add not only flavor, but also movement, a whimsical touch that's become iconic. Historically, katsuobushi, dried bonito, has been a cornerstone of Japanese cuisine for centuries, used in broths, sauces, and now as a finishing flourish on street snacks. Scholars still debate whether the dramatic dancing effect was intentional artistry or merely a happy coincidence of heat and air currents. A quirky fact catches your attention. Some vendors experiment with differently smoked bonito, which subtly changes the aroma. You imagine the first cook daring to swap one type for another, and customers sniffing cautiously before nodding in approval. This tiny ingredient carries centuries of taste, tradition, and playful experimentation in every flake that lands on a golden takoyaki ball. As the steam rises and the flakes shimmy, you notice the soft crunch of tempura scraps beneath, the chewy octopus inside, and the luscious sauce coating everything. Each sensory layer adds depth, making the snack feel almost alive. Scholars continue to argue over the perfect ratio of toppings, and you think it's fascinating that even small visual flourishes spark centuries-long debates. You bite into the ball, feeling the gentle crumble of bonito flakes, mix with the sweet savory sauce and tender batter. There's a rhythm here, the sizzle, the flutter, the chew. That feels timeless. You pause for a moment, letting the flavors settle, appreciating how something so simple became an enduring icon of Osaka street culture. A small piece of history dancing right in front of you. You take a slow stroll along the alley, letting the scent of takoyaki drift through your senses like a gentle memory. Each stall seems to have its own personality, some loud and bustling, others quiet and meticulous. Historically, street vendors in Osaka developed distinct styles to stand out, from cooking techniques to sauce recipes. Scholars still debate whether these stylistic differences were driven by competition or regional taste preferences. But either way, each stall is a tiny chapter of culinary history. You pause to watch a vendor expertly sprinkle aonori, the green seaweed powder, atop a batch of takoyaki. It adds a subtle oceanic note that complements the chewy octopus and sweet savory sauce. A fun, little-known tidbit. Early versions sometimes skip this step entirely, making the green garnish a later innovation that became standard only after World War II. You smile at the thought of customers in the 1940s discovering the magic of that delicate green dust for the first time. The alley hums softly with conversation, the clatter of griddles, and the gentle rustle of lanterns overhead. You notice children pointing excitedly at the steam rising from the griddle, while elders lean casually, sharing stories of past decades. There's a slow rhythm here, a comforting sense that time passes gently. Yet history accumulates in subtle layers, techniques, flavors, rituals, and even debates about authenticity. As you take a bite of the golden, perfectly round takoyaki, the warmth spreads through your hands and mouth. You feel the tender octopus, the soft batter, the subtle crunch of tempura scraps, and the aromatic dance of bonito and aonori. In this moment, you realize that history isn't just in books. It's sizzling on the griddle, flickering in lantern light, and living in every bite you savor. You step back into the alley, noticing the way the evening crowd has shifted. The street is quieter now, the air tinged with lingering smoke and sauce aroma. Historically, Osaka vendors would adjust their offerings as night fell, adding more sauce or tweaking batter thickness to suit the slightly cooler air. Scholars still debate whether these late-night adjustments were born from taste preferences or purely practical considerations. But either way, the changes subtly influence every bite. A quirky little observation. Some vendors keep tiny fans by the griddle, gently blowing away excess smoke to prevent flavor contamination. You chuckle at the ingenuity, imagining someone fanning octopus balls like a delicate tea ceremony. Early cooks didn't have this luxury, often letting smoke drift freely, which may have subtly altered flavors in ways modern taste tests can't fully replicate. As you watch the griddle, you notice the rhythmic flipping of the takoyaki balls. The vendor's hands move almost hypnotically, balancing speed with precision. This technique, refined over decades, ensures a perfect golden brown exterior, while keeping the interior tender and flavorful. Scholars continue to debate whether this style originated in Osaka or was influenced by other regional street food traditions. You take a careful bite, letting the warmth and texture envelop your senses. The tender octopus, soft batter, sweet savory sauce, and gentle aroma combine into a comforting harmony. In this calm, after-hours moment, you feel connected to the countless hands, faces, and tastes that shaped this humble snack. It's a reminder that history isn't just something we read, it's something we savor. One bite at a time. You notice how the subtle textures of the takoyaki reveal the care behind each batch. The golden crust gives way to soft, almost creamy batter inside, cradling the tender octopus. Historically, this contrast between crisp exterior and chewy interior became a hallmark of Osaka street food, something that early vendors experimented with tirelessly. Scholars still debate whether the emphasis on texture over flavor came first, or vice versa. But every bite you take seems to answer that question on a personal level. A quirky detail: some old-school vendors used to lightly brush miso onto the griddle before pouring batter, creating a slightly caramelized flavor. You smile at the thought, imagining a taste test between traditionalists and innovators. This tiny touch, almost forgotten today, is a reminder that even minor experiments can leave a lasting imprint on culinary culture. As you watch, the vendor sprinkles on ori and finely shaved bonito flakes, which flutter delicately in the rising steam. Each addition seems choreographed, an unspoken rhythm that has been honed over generations. Academic debates persist about whether such finishing touches were meant primarily for flavor, visual appeal, or both. But the effect is undeniably mesmerizing. You take a bite, letting the interplay of textures and flavors settle on your tongue. The crisp exterior, tender interior, and subtle umami notes combine into a comforting, almost meditative experience. Standing here, you realize that history isn't confined to dusty pages. It lives, moves, and sizzles right in front of you, wrapped in the perfect little sphere of takoyaki. You wander further down the alley, drawn by the faint scent of sauce and sizzling batter. Each stall has its own personality, reflected in how the vendors move and interact with customers. Historically, these streets were hubs of experimentation, chefs adjusting sauce thickness, batter consistency, and fillings to appeal to the evening crowd. Scholars still debate whether certain techniques originated organically from customer demand, or were the creative vision of the cooks themselves. A quirky little nugget catches your attention. In the 1950s, some vendors experimented with unusual fillings like shrimp or vegetables when octopus was scarce. It didn't always catch on, but it shows how flexible and inventive the takoyaki tradition can be. You chuckle imagining someone biting into a vegetable-filled ball, expecting octopus, and the surprise that followed. Culinary history is full of these small, almost forgotten experiments that quietly shaped modern favorites. The vendor flips the balls with precise, rhythmic movements, a dance perfected over decades. You notice how the batter puffs slightly in the molds, forming a golden shell, while keeping the inside soft and chewy. Scholars still argue whether these techniques originated from Osaka or were inspired by neighboring street food cultures. But in this moment, the technique is perfect, and you're a grateful audience. You take a bite, letting the textures and flavors unfold slowly. The warmth spreads through your hands and mouth, connecting you to generations of cooks and eaters who perfected this snack. It's more than food. It's a living history lesson, a reminder that innovation, care, and tradition can coexist beautifully in the simplest of dishes. You pause to watch the subtle artistry of garnishing. Ananori and bonito flakes dance atop the takoyaki like confetti at a miniature festival. Historically, these finishing touches were optional, yet over time they became iconic, almost a signature of Osaka street snacks. Scholars still debate whether the visual appeal or the flavor impact was the primary driver. But either way, they elevate the experience from mere food to a sensory celebration. A quirky fact: in the 1930s, some vendors experimented with tiny sprinkles of chili powder or sesame seeds on their takoyaki. Not all experiments succeeded. Locals could be surprisingly opinionated. But the willingness to play with ingredients shows the creativity embedded in street food culture. You smile imagining a crowd tasting these spicy balls for the first time. Eyebrows raised, mouths full, and opinions forming instantly. The vendor flips each ball with hypnotic rhythm, ensuring even cooking and perfect roundness. You notice that the golden crust forms at just the right moment, capturing aroma and warmth inside. Scholars still argue whether slight imperfections in shape actually enhance texture, or if perfect spheres are truly superior. You take a bite, letting the layers mingle in your mouth. The crisp outside, the soft interior, the tender octopus, and the aromatic garnish. The flavors are comforting, almost nostalgic, carrying whispers of the alley's long history. Standing there, you realize that even small details, tiny flakes, green dust, or a perfect flip, tell stories of experimentation, debate, and tradition that persist in every delicious bite. You step back and observe the subtle differences between each vendor's takoyaki. Some balls are perfectly round, others slightly oval, and you realize that shape has always been a quiet signature of a stall's style. Historically, Osaka cooks spent decades mastering flipping techniques to achieve that ideal sphere. Scholars still debate whether perfect roundness truly affects flavor, or if it's mostly visual tradition. But in your mouth, each shape delivers its own satisfaction. A quirky little detail. In the 1960s, some vendors experimented with adding tiny herbs inside the batter. Shiso leaves, for instance, to create unique aroma and taste combinations. Not all experiments caught on, but it shows the playful spirit embedded in street food innovation. You imagine the first hesitant bite, a sudden herbal note mingling with octopus and batter, and the mix of surprise and delight it caused. The vendor moves with a practiced rhythm, flipping the balls, brushing sauce, sprinkling on nori, and watching the steam rise. Every gesture is deliberate, honed over years, yet somehow effortless. Scholars still argue whether modern techniques preserve the authentic feel of historical street cooking, or if today's perfection loses some of the charming quirks of earlier versions. You take a bite, savoring the tender interior, the crisp exterior, and the layered flavors of sauce, octopus, and garnish. It's comforting, warm, and subtly complex, reminding you that history isn't just in textbooks. It's alive in the textures, aromas, and tiny quirks of each takoyaki ball. In this quiet alley, you feel connected to generations of cooks and diners, sharing the same taste and joy. You notice how the street lighting casts gentle shadows over the sizzling griddles, creating a warm, intimate atmosphere. Historically, nighttime takoyaki stalls were a social magnet, drawing neighbors and travelers alike. Scholars still debate whether the rise of evening stalls was driven by demand, or simply the need to avoid daytime heat. But either way, the tradition shaped Osaka's culinary nightlife. A quirky observation. Some vendors used lanterns not just for light but to signal freshness. Bright red meant the takoyaki was hot, and just off the griddle. You chuckle at the idea of these signal lanterns as early marketing tools, long before Instagram or review apps existed. Early customers probably developed a Pavlovian response. See the red lantern, follow the aroma, and indulge immediately. The vendor flips each ball with hypnotic precision, sauce glistening, bonito flakes dancing. The combination of movement, scent, and light creates a sensory symphony. Scholars still argue about whether the most authentic experience is found in bustling day markets or calm night alleys. But in this moment, it hardly matters. The experience is alive, immersive, and delicious. You take a slow bite, feeling the warmth of the griddle beneath your hands, the tender octopus inside, the crisp batter outside, and the sweet savory sauce tying it all together. It's comforting, grounding, and strangely timeless. Standing there, you feel part of a long lineage of takoyaki lovers, each bite connecting past, present, and perhaps even future generations in this cozy, aromatic alleyway. You notice the gentle rhythm of the alley as vendors call out their specialties, customers laugh, and the occasional bell jingles from a bicycle passing by. Historically, Osaka's street food culture thrived on this cacophony of sound, creating a lively backdrop for social gatherings. Scholars still debate whether the sensory chaos added to the charm or simply tested the patience of newcomers. But for you, it's oddly soothing. A soundtrack to your takoyaki adventure. A quirky detail catches your eye. In some stalls, small hand-painted signs advertise the day's secret topping, ranging from extra ginger to a rare type of pickled vegetable. These fleeting innovations remind you that culinary creativity isn't just about taste. It's about storytelling. Early vendors would secretly compete to see whose topping garnered the most repeat customers, a playful rivalry that historians continue to discuss. The vendor flips each ball with care, ensuring each piece gets just the right sear. The aroma rises in gentle waves, carrying the warmth and subtle sweetness of the sauce. Scholars argue whether these finishing touches, the slight caramelization or extra sprinkle of bonito, make a real difference in taste. But you can feel the impact in every bite. You take a slow, deliberate mouthful, savoring the crispy exterior, soft batter, tender octopus, and delicate garnishes. It's comforting, grounding, and evokes a feeling of timelessness. Standing there, you realize that history isn't just events in books. It's alive in motion, sound, smell, and taste. Every sizzle, every sprinkle, every bite connects you to generations of cooks and eaters who shaped this unique, flavorful tradition. You watch as the steam rises lazily from each takoyaki ball, curling around your hands and carrying the subtle aroma of sauce and octopus. Historically, this visual cue signaled freshness. Early Osaka customers would often wait for the steam to dissipate slightly before biting in, believing it enhanced texture. Scholars still debate whether this was a practical observation or just a long-standing culinary superstition. But the effect is undeniably charming. A quirky fact: some vendors experimented with tiny drops of dashi-infused oil atop each ball, claiming it enhanced the umami aroma. Not all experiments survived the test of time, but they reveal the playful ingenuity of street cooks. You imagine a customer catching the scent and feeling a moment of anticipation before the first bite, a subtle theater of flavor. The vendor flips each ball with a hypnotic rhythm, ensuring golden crusts and tender interiors. You notice the way the griddle's heat interacts with the batter, puffing it slightly, creating tiny pockets that trap steam and amplify flavor. Scholars still debate whether traditional iron griddles can be fully replaced by modern flat plates without losing these subtle nuances. But your taste buds don't lie. There's magic in these old techniques. You take a bite, feeling the warmth, the contrast of textures, and the mingling of sauce, octopus, and garnishes. It's comforting, almost meditative, as if the centuries of experimentation and care have culminated in this single moment. You smile, realizing that even small street foods like takoyaki carry layers of history, innovation, and joy, quietly connecting the present to generations past. You pause at a particularly busy stall, watching a line of eager customers waiting for their takoyaki fix. Historically, the popularity of such stalls spurred a form of informal competition, with vendors striving to perfect flavors and techniques. Scholars still debate whether this rivalry truly improved quality or merely fueled local legend. But it certainly added energy and character to the streets. A quirky tidbit: some vendors would hide small charms or lucky coins under the batter occasionally, a playful tradition meant to bring good fortune to whoever got it. You chuckle imagining the surprise of a first-time customer discovering a tiny coin nestled in their ball, a whimsical reminder that street food can be playful and interactive. The griddle hisses softly as the vendor flips each ball, brushing sauce and sprinkling bonito flakes with meticulous care. You notice how the batter slightly shifts, forming tiny golden pockets that trap flavor, creating a satisfying texture. Scholars debate whether modern non-stick griddles can replicate this exact effect. But standing here, the difference is palpable. You take a slow bite, savoring the tender octopus, the crispy outer layer, and the harmonious blend of sauce and garnish. The warmth spreads gently, comforting and grounding you in the moment. You realize that even amidst the bustling crowd, the history, innovation, and playful touches of takoyaki continue to connect people, one perfect ball at a time. You notice how each stall's sauce glistens under the dim streetlights, reflecting decades of perfected recipes. Historically, takoyaki sauce evolved from simple soy and dashi mixtures to complex blends with sugar, mirin, and Worcestershire-like ingredients. Scholars still debate whether the sweet-savory balance came from Western influence or homegrown experimentation. But the result is unmistakably comforting. A quirky little fact: in the 1950s, a few vendors experimented with chocolate-flavored sauce as a novelty. Unsurprisingly, it didn't last long. But you can't help but smile imagining curious customers taking a cautious bite, eyebrows raised, and reconsidering their choices. Culinary history is full of such brief, playful experiments that didn't stick, yet added flavor to the story itself. The vendor flips each takoyaki ball with smooth precision, ensuring even cooking in that perfect golden brown crust. You notice the steam rising, carrying aroma and warmth, mingling with laughter and chatter from nearby customers. Scholars debate whether the visual appeal or taste is more crucial in attracting repeat business. But you feel both elements equally enchant your senses. You take a slow bite, letting the sweet savory sauce, tender octopus, crispy exterior, and delicate garnishes merge. The flavors unfold gently, grounding you in the alley's warm ambiance. It's remarkable how something so simple carries layers of history, experimentation, and care, showing that the magic of Osaka street food isn't just in taste. It's in tradition, memory, and a touch of whimsy. You step closer to a smaller, quieter stall, tucked in a corner, noticing the vendor's meticulous attention to detail. Historically, these hidden gems often preserved older recipes and techniques that had disappeared from busier streets. Scholars still debate whether such secrecy was about protecting trade secrets or simply pride in tradition. But you can sense the care in every motion, a quirky little observation. Some of these corner vendors still use wooden skewers to test doneness, a method largely abandoned in favor of modern tools. You imagine apprentices learning this old technique, feeling the heat through the wood, connecting tactily with the batter. It's a small ritual, almost meditative, reminding you that culinary history is often hands-on. The vendor flips each ball with a quiet rhythm, sauce applied sparingly, bonito flakes gently dancing atop. You notice how the griddle's slight imperfections create tiny pockets of caramelization, enhancing flavor in ways modern plates struggle to replicate. Scholars debate whether these irregularities are defects or integral to the authentic takoyaki experience. But every bite here seems to prove their value. You take a bite, letting the textures, warmth, and layered flavors settle in. The crispy exterior, soft interior, and tender octopus create a comforting harmony. You realize that history isn't only in grand monuments or textbooks. It's in the small, intimate corners of a city, preserved in technique, flavor, and quiet devotion to craft. You wander toward a stall where a group of friends laugh quietly, sharing a freshly cooked batch of takoyaki. Historically, these social moments define street food culture in Osaka, making the snack not just sustenance, but a communal experience. Scholars still debate whether the food itself or the social interaction was the bigger draw. But standing here, it feels perfectly balanced. A quirky detail: some vendors would offer half-flavored balls, splitting them with different toppings for variety. You smile, imagining a cautious diner sampling two flavors at once, weighing which one they liked better. Early experimental offerings like this sparked debates among historians about whether takoyaki was meant to be uniform or a canvas for playful creativity. The vendor flips each ball with expert timing, brushing on sauce and sprinkling garnish as steam rises in gentle clouds. You notice how each turn and sprinkle is deliberate, a choreography refined through decades of practice. Scholars still debate whether modern machines can replicate the nuanced control of a skilled hand. But here, precision meets art effortlessly. You take a bite, savoring the warm, tender octopus, crisp exterior, and harmonious sauce. The flavors meld slowly, comforting and grounding you. In this moment, you feel the connection between food, culture, and social bonds, realizing that history is lived not just in museums or texts, but in laughter, shared snacks, and the warmth of a simple takoyaki ball in your hand. You notice how the street gradually empties, leaving behind the quiet sizzle of griddles and the lingering scent of sauce. Historically, the last rounds of takoyaki were often considered the most flavorful. The heat and oils had fully melded, creating a subtle depth. Scholars still debate whether this effect is chemical or just a romanticized notion of end-of-day perfection. But your taste buds can't help but agree. A quirky little fact: some vendors would intentionally overcook a small batch to caramelize the batter more, claiming it added a secret smoky sweetness. You chuckle, imagining early customers, surprised by the unexpected twist, and then coming back for more once they realize the magic. These small experiments are part of what makes Osaka's culinary tradition so rich and layered. The vendor flips the remaining balls slowly, the rhythm now almost meditative. You notice how the golden crust glistens under the dim lights, each ball carrying warmth and history. Scholars debate whether modern mass-produced griddles can ever replicate this subtle, nuanced flavor profile. But standing here, you realize it's more than technique. It's care, intuition, and experience. You take a careful bite, savoring the delicate crunch, soft interior, tender octopus, and harmonious sauce. The warmth spreads through your hands and mouth, grounding you in the quiet rhythm of the street. Even as the crowd thins, the flavors, textures, and centuries of practice linger, reminding you that history often resides in small, fleeting moments, quietly enjoyed one bite at a time. You stroll past the final few stalls, where vendors are beginning to pack up for the night. Historically, closing time was a signal for camaraderie among cooks, exchanging tips, leftover ingredients, and stories of the day. Scholars still debate whether these nightly interactions shaped regional techniques or were simply a social ritual. But either way, they contributed to the living history of Osaka's street food. A quirky tidbit: some vendors would secretly hide small experimental balls for friends or apprentices to taste, testing new toppings or batter tweaks. You smile imagining someone cautiously biting into a takoyaki infused with a novel herb, their surprise and delight serving as instant feedback. These little experiments kept tradition alive, while quietly pushing innovation forward. The vendor flips the last batch with a gentle rhythm, brushing sauce carefully and letting the aroma linger in the air. You notice how even at the end of the day, each ball still receives attention, highlighting a devotion to craft that transcends exhaustion. Scholars debate whether modern commercial practices can truly replicate this level of care. But standing here, it's clear that dedication matters more than speed. You take a final bite, feeling the crispy exterior, tender interior, and perfectly seasoned octopus meld together. The warmth spreads slowly, comforting and grounding. In this moment, you appreciate that history isn't just dates and events. It's alive in these quiet gestures, subtle flavors, and the shared joy of a simple, beloved snack. You find yourself at the very end of the alley, where the last lights flicker and a soft calm settles over the street. Historically, these quiet moments mark the transition from bustling day to reflective night, giving both vendors and customers a chance to savor the lingering flavors and memories. Scholars still debate whether this end-of-day serenity influenced the way takoyaki was consumed socially. But standing here, you feel the magic in the stillness. A quirky little fact: some stalls would leave a single takoyaki ball in the mold overnight, as a good luck charm for the next day's business. You chuckle imagining the first customer discovering it. A tiny unexpected gift, linking past and future. These playful rituals remind you that history is full of small gestures that carry meaning beyond mere practicality. The vendor flips the last few balls slowly, sauce dripping gently, bonito flakes settling softly atop. You notice how even in the quiet, each movement is deliberate and rhythmic, a culmination of decades of practice, intuition, and care. Scholars debate whether modern automated griddles can capture this human touch. But the sensory experience, warmth, aroma, sound is undeniable. You take a final, slow bite, letting the textures and flavors linger. The crisp exterior, tender interior, and umami, rich octopus combine in a comforting, almost meditative rhythm. Standing in the soft glow of the alley, you realize that history lives not just in books, but in the sensory, fleeting moments of everyday life. Each bite of takoyaki is a small, delicious dialogue with the past, a gentle connection to the hands and hearts that shaped this beloved street snack. Now, take a deep breath. You're standing in the quiet after the hustle of the street, the smells lingering gently, like a soft memory brushing against your senses. The lanterns sway lazily, casting warm amber light across empty alleyways. You feel a gentle hum, the subtle heartbeat of a city that has lived, experimented, and laughed across generations. The flavors, the textures, the little debates all fold into your mind softly, like a story being whispered just for you. Let the warmth of the takoyaki linger, the tender chew, the sweet savory drizzle, the dance of bonito flakes, all blending into a slow, comforting rhythm. Your thoughts float like steam above the griddle, gentle and unhurried. And as you feel yourself settling deeper into this calm, remember, every small bite carries a piece of history, a tiny adventure, a whispered conversation with time itself. Let it wrap around you like a soft blanket, guiding you slowly, softly, into the quiet embrace of sleep.